The smell of aged oak and expensive leather hit me before I even crossed the threshold. I'd reviewed hundreds of security assessments in my career, walked through corporate offices where CEOs played at power, toured mansions where old money tried to buy respect. But stepping into Dante Chiarel's territory felt different, not because of the opulence, though the marble floors and Italian art screamed wealth, but because of the silence. The kind of silence that came from absolute control. My heels clicked against the polished stone as I followed Marcus, Dante's second-in-command, through corridors lined with men whose eyes tracked my movement with the precision of security cameras. They wore suits that cost more than my monthly rent, but their stillness was what caught my attention, the kind of discipline you couldn't buy, only earn through loyalty or fear. Probably both. "Mr. Chiarel is expecting you in the study," Marcus said, his voice flat, professional. He didn't like me being here. I could read it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hand hovered near his jacket where I knew a weapon rested. Good. I didn't need to be liked. I needed to do my job and leave. The company I worked for, Sentinel Strategic Solutions, specialized in identifying vulnerabilities in high-security operations. We were ghosts in the industry, hired by people who couldn't afford mistakes. When Dante Chiarel's name appeared on my assignment roster, I'd done my research. 28 years old, youngest head of a crime family in New Orleans history. Reputation built on calculated violence and uncanny business sense. The kind of man who inspired fear in boardrooms and backrooms alike. The kind of man I'd learned to read like spreadsheets. All numbers and patterns. Nothing that truly surprised me anymore. Marcus opened double doors to reveal a study that looked like it belonged in a Renaissance palazzo. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive desk of dark wood. Windows overlooking the French Quarter with its wrought iron balconies and endless secrets. And there, standing with his back to me, examining what looked like a genuine Caravaggio, was Dante Chiarel. He didn't turn immediately. Just finished whatever contemplation he was engaged in, took a slow sip from a crystal glass of what I guessed was whiskey worth more than my car, and only then acknowledged my presence. When he finally faced me, I understood why people spoke his name in whispers. Dante Chiarel was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. Dark hair perfectly styled in that slicked-back look that somehow worked on Italian features. Strong jaw, eyes so dark they looked black in certain light. His charcoal suit was tailored to emphasize broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build. A Patek Philippe watch caught light at his wrist. A thin gold chain disappeared beneath his collar. Everything about him screamed wealth, power, control. Everything about him was meant to intimidate. "Miss Martelli," he said, his voice a low rumble, with the faintest trace of a New Orleans drawl, mixed with something older, something that spoke of Sicilian roots. "I've heard impressive things about your work." I set my briefcase on the chair he hadn't offered me yet. "And I've heard impressive things about your operation, Mr. Chiarel, though I'm here to determine if those impressions match reality." Something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise, maybe. Most people who entered this room probably stammered their way through pleasantries, eager to please, desperate not to offend. I had a job to do, and flattery wasn't part of the contract. "Direct," he observed, moving to his desk with the fluid grace of someone who knew his body was a weapon. "I appreciate that. Please, sit." I took the offered chair, crossed my legs, and pulled out my tablet. "I'll need access to your security protocols, staff schedules, entry and exit points, and details on any incidents in the past 6 months. I understand discretion is paramount in your line of work. Everything I review stays confidential." Dante settled into his chair, leaning back with the casual confidence of someone who'd never had to fight for space in a room. "You're not intimidated. Should I be? Most people are." I met his gaze steadily. "Most people don't specialize in finding weaknesses in operations like yours. If I spent my time being intimidated, I'd be terrible at my job." A smile curved his lips. Small, controlled, revealing nothing of what he actually thought. "And are you? Terrible at your job? You tell me. You hired my company. Presumably you did research." "I did." He opened a folder on his desk, and I recognized my own file, my professional history, my credentials, probably details about my personal life I'd rather he didn't have. "Elodie Marcelli, top of your class at Georgetown, Master's in Security Analysis, 5 years with Sentinel, success rate of 97% in identifying and addressing vulnerabilities. You've worked with corporations, private security firms, and at least 3 government agencies, though those details are classified. You have good sources. I have excellent sources." He closed the folder, his attention fully on me now. "What I'm curious about is why someone with your credentials chooses to stay with a private firm instead of going federal. The pay would be better." "The autonomy wouldn't be." I opened a security assessment template on my tablet. "I prefer choosing my clients." "And yet you chose to work for me." "My company chose. I don't pick the assignments." "But you could have refused." I paused, stylus hovering over the screen. He wasn't wrong. I could have passed this job to another analyst. But something about the challenge intrigued me. Not because of who Dante Curel was, but because of what his operation represented. A perfectly functioning criminal enterprise that had never been successfully infiltrated or compromised. From a professional standpoint, it was fascinating. From a personal standpoint, I didn't do personal. Not with work. Certainly not with men like him. "Let's just say I'm curious to see if you're as good as your reputation suggests," I said coolly. "Shall we begin?" For the next 2 hours, I walked through his operation with Marcus as my guide, Dante occasionally joining to provide context. I examined everything. The biometric security systems, the rotation schedules of his guards, the encrypted communication networks, the redundancies built into every aspect of his organization. It was impressive, I'd give him that. Whoever designed his security understood both technology and human psychology. But nothing was perfect. Nothing was impenetrable. And my job was to find the cracks. We ended back in the study as evening settled over the quarter, the last golden light streaming through those massive windows. Dante poured himself another whiskey, offered me one. I declined. I never drank while working. "Your initial thoughts?" he asked, settling into the leather sofa across from where I sat reviewing my notes. I looked up from my tablet, studying him for a moment. He'd loosened his tie slightly, rolled up his sleeves to reveal forearms that confirmed my suspicion about his build. This was a man who understood violence intimately, whose body was maintained not just for appearance but for function. There was a thin scar along his left forearm, nearly invisible, unless you knew to look for it. "Your security is good," I said finally. "Better than most operations I've assessed, legal or otherwise. But you're over-reliant on technology and underutilizing human intelligence. Your systems are impressive, but they create patterns. Patterns can be predicted. Predicted things can be exploited." His expression didn't change, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "Explain." I stood, moving to the window, needing the distance to organize my thoughts. "Your guard rotations are too regular, every 12 hours exactly. That kind of precision is admirable but dangerous. It means anyone watching long enough knows exactly when shifts change, when focus might lapse even for 30 seconds. Your biometric systems are cutting edge, but they're networked. Networked systems can be hacked. You have redundancies, yes, but they follow the same protocols. A smart adversary doesn't fight your strengths. They wait for the moment between, the breath you take, the second you think you're completely secure." Silence filled the room. I turned to find Dante watching me with an intensity that might have unsettled someone else. But I'd spent years reading men who thought they were inscrutable, decoding the micro-expressions they didn't know they revealed. Interesting, he said finally. And what would you recommend? Randomization, human intuition. Trust your people's instincts as much as your technology. The best security isn't just about building walls, it's about knowing when someone's trying to climb them before they reach the top. He stood then, moving toward me with that same predatory grace. Not threatening exactly, but deliberate. Everything Dante Kirill did was deliberate. He stopped close enough that I caught his scent. Something expensive and cedar-based, mixed with the whiskey on his breath and something else. Something uniquely him. You speak like someone who's tried to climb walls before, he observed. I speak like someone paid to understand how walls get climbed. He was studying me the way I'd been studying his operation, looking for weaknesses, cracks, vulnerabilities. Can I ask you something, Miss Marcelli? That depends on the question. What do you think of me? The directness of it caught me off guard, but I recovered quickly. Professionally or personally? Either. Both. I considered lying, offering some diplomatic response that would smooth over this moment and let me finish my job without complication. But something about the way he asked, genuinely curious rather than fishing for compliments, made me answer honestly. Honestly? I think you're overestimated. His eyebrows rose slightly. Overestimated. Everyone acts like you're this untouchable force, this criminal mastermind who can't be challenged. But you're just a man, Mr. Kirill. Brilliant, yes. Powerful, certainly. But not. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Not as extraordinary as people seem to think. The silence that followed felt heavy. Dangerous. I'd crossed a line. I knew it the moment the words left my mouth. Men like Dante Kirill didn't tolerate being diminished, especially not in their own territory, their own study, after they'd granted access to the inner workings of their empire. But instead of anger, something else flickered across his face. Something almost like interest. You don't think I'm enough, he said slowly, taking another step closer. I don't think you're everything, I corrected, refusing to retreat despite every instinct screaming at me to create distance. There's a difference. He moved then, smooth, controlled, inevitable. One moment we were separate, the next his hand was at my waist, pulling me toward him with a firmness that left no room for resistance, but somehow didn't feel violent. My breath caught as our bodies aligned, his height forcing me to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Let me see if I understand, he murmured, his voice dropping to something almost intimate, almost dangerous. You think I'm overrated, that my reputation exceeds my reality, that I'm not. What? Impressive enough? Intimidating enough? Powerful enough? My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. I think you're used to people being afraid of you. I'm not afraid. His other hand came up, fingers threading through my hair at the base of my skull. Not pulling, just holding, keeping me exactly where he wanted me. Our faces were inches apart now, so close I could count the gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth of his breath against my lips. You should be, he whispered. Then he stopped. Right there, right when I was certain he would kiss me. Certain I should push him away. Should remind him this was professional, should do something other than stand frozen in his grip. He just stopped. His lips hovered so close to mine that I couldn't breathe without feeling that almost contact, that promise of something that refused to materialize. And then he smiled. Slow, knowing, devastating. I don't need to kiss you to prove anything, Elodie, he said. My first name sounding completely different in his mouth than it ever had before. I just need to show you that all that control you're so proud of, it's not as solid as you think. He released me then, stepping back with the same deliberate grace, leaving me standing there trying to remember how to breathe normally, how to organize my thoughts, How to pretend that my entire nervous system hadn't just lit up in response to something that never actually happened. "Your security assessment," I managed, proud that my voice only shook slightly. "I'll need another day to complete it properly." "Of course." He moved to his desk, back to business as if the last few minutes hadn't occurred. "Marcus will ensure you have access to anything you need. Will tomorrow work for your follow-up?" "Tomorrow's fine." As I gathered my things, hyper-aware of his presence, even though he'd returned to studying whatever documents were spread across his desk, I realized something that sent a different kind of chill through me. Dante Kirill hadn't needed to kiss me, hadn't needed to touch me. He'd proven his point perfectly well by showing me exactly how easily he could crack the professional armor I'd spent years perfecting. And as I walked out of his study, past his guards, out into the humid New Orleans evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a terrible mistake. Not in what I'd said, but in thinking I could assess Dante Kirill the way I assessed security systems. Some things, I was beginning to realize, weren't meant to be analyzed from a safe distance. I didn't sleep well that night. My apartment in the Garden District, a renovated carriage house I'd rented specifically for this assignment, felt too quiet, too empty. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt phantom sensations. His hand at my waist, his fingers in my hair, his breath against my lips. The almost kiss that somehow affected me more than actual kisses had. It was ridiculous, unprofessional, exactly the kind of complication I'd built my career avoiding. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was just adrenaline, just my body responding to a situation my analytical mind had recognized as dangerous. Nothing more. I dressed in my standard work uniform, tailored black pants, crisp white blouse, low heels practical enough to run in if necessary, and reviewed my notes over coffee that tasted like bitter determination. The follow-up assessment would be straightforward. I'd complete my evaluation, deliver my report to Sentinel, collect my fee, and never think about Dante Kirill's dark eyes or the way he'd whispered my name again. Except nothing with Dante Kirill was ever straightforward. Marcus picked me up at 9, his usual stoic expression somehow more tense than yesterday. As we drove through the quarter's narrow streets, past wrought iron balconies and tourists already stumbling between bars despite the early hour, I noticed something different. Additional security vehicles, more men positioned at strategic corners, a subtle but unmistakable increase in defensive posture. "Something happen?" I asked, watching another suited guard fall into position as we passed. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with." Which meant yes, something had happened, and it was significant enough to warrant this level of response. My analytical mind started cataloging possibilities, rival organizations, law enforcement attention, internal threats, but I kept my observations to myself. Whatever it wasn't my business. I was here to assess security vulnerabilities, not get involved in whatever wars Dante Kirill was fighting. The compound looked different in daylight. More beautiful somehow, the architecture revealed in sharp relief against a cloudless blue sky. Gardens I hadn't noticed yesterday surrounded the building, carefully maintained, expensive. Another display of resources and control. Guard positions were more obvious now, men standing at attention with the kind of discipline that spoke to military training. Dante was waiting in the courtyard when we arrived, and the sight of him in casual clothing, dark jeans, a black Henley that emphasized his build, sunglasses pushed up into his hair, did something unfortunate to my carefully reconstructed composure. "Miss Marcelli," he greeted me, that slight smile playing at his lips. "I hope you slept well." Liar, I thought. He knew exactly how well I'd slept. Could probably read it in the faint shadows under my eyes, the extra care I'd taken with my makeup to hide them. "Well enough," I replied coolly. "Shall we continue?" Instead of leading me back inside, he gestured toward the gardens. "I thought we'd start with the perimeter today. You mentioned patterns in my security. I'd like you to see how we've already begun implementing changes based on your initial assessment. That surprised me. Most clients waited for the full report before making adjustments, if they made them at all. But as we walked the grounds, Dante pointing out subtle modifications to guard rotations and patrol patterns, I realized he'd taken my criticisms seriously. More than seriously. He'd anticipated my recommendations and started executing them before I'd even formalized my analysis. Impressive, I admitted, genuinely meaning it. Most people resist changing established systems. Most people aren't trying to stay alive in my particular line of work, he replied. I don't hire experts and then ignore their expertise. That would be stupid, and whatever else I might be, I'm not stupid. We stopped at the garden's edge, where the manicured grounds gave way to a natural bayou landscape. The water was dark, ancient, hiding alligators and snakes and probably bodies if the rumors about Dante's family were true. Beautiful and deadly, much like the man standing beside me. Tell me something, I said, watching dragonflies skim the water's surface. Why did you really hire my company? Your security was already excellent. You didn't need an outside assessment. Maybe I wanted to know if I'd missed anything. Or maybe you wanted to send a message. Having Sentinel Strategic Solutions evaluate your operation tells anyone paying attention that you're confident enough to invite scrutiny, that you have nothing to hide. He turned to look at me, sunlight catching in his dark eyes. You think I'm that calculating? I think everything you do is calculated, Mr. Kirill, including yesterday. Yesterday? His tone was innocent, but his expression wasn't. The almost kiss, the demonstration. You were proving a point. Was I? He moved closer, and I forced myself not to retreat. And what point would that be? That you could affect me, that my professional detachment wasn't as solid as I claimed. Interesting theory. He was close again, though not as close as yesterday. Testing boundaries, I realized. Seeing how I'd respond today, whether I'd learn to maintain distance, or if I'd allow him back into my space. But maybe I just wanted to kiss you. And yet you didn't. No, he agreed. I didn't. Do you know why? I met his gaze steadily, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing how his proximity affected me. Because it would have complicated things, made it harder for me to do my job objectively. Partly. His hand came up, fingers ghosting along my jawline without quite touching. Another promise unfulfilled. But mostly because when I finally kiss you, Elodie, I want it to be because you asked me to. Not because I overwhelmed you. Not because I proved some point. Because you wanted it enough to admit it. Heat flooded through me. Anger or arousal, or both tangled together. That's arrogant. Is it? He dropped his hand, stepped back, gave me space to breathe again. We'll see. The rest of the morning passed in a frustrating blur of professional assessment punctuated by moments of acute awareness. Every time Dante's hand brushed mine as we reviewed documents, every time he leaned close to point out something on my tablet, every time our eyes met across a room, I felt it, that pull, that magnetic intensity that had nothing to do with security protocols and everything to do with the way he looked at me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. By lunch, I was ready to retreat back to my apartment and spend the afternoon reviewing my notes in blessed solitude. But Dante had other plans. Have lunch with me, he said as we returned to the main house. Not a question, not exactly a command. Something in between. You should eat. My chef prepared something special, and I'd like to discuss your preliminary findings in a more relaxed setting. Professional, I reminded myself. This could be kept professional. Fine, but we keep it business. His smile suggested he had different ideas about that, but he simply led me to a private dining room overlooking the gardens. The table was set for two, intimate despite its size. Wine was already poured. A Barolo that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "I don't drink while working," I reminded him. "You said that yesterday." He picked up his glass, took a slow sip. "But you're not working right now. You're having lunch. Lunch related to work." "If you say so." The food was extraordinary. Delicate pasta with white truffle, perfectly seared fish, vegetables that somehow tasted like more than vegetables. I tried to eat slowly, professionally, but I was hungrier than I'd realized. "When did you last eat?" Dante asked, watching me with that same focused attention he brought to everything. "This morning. Coffee." "Coffee isn't food." "It is when you're on a deadline." He frowned slightly. "You're very good at taking care of systems, Elodie. Less good at taking care of yourself." The observation was too accurate, too intimate. I set down my fork. "We're not doing this." "Doing what?" "Whatever this is. This thing where you pretend to care about my eating habits or my sleep schedule. I'm here to do a job, not develop a personal relationship with you." "And if I want both?" My breath caught. "Then you'll be disappointed. I don't mix business and personal. Ever." "Never?" "Never." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with that unnerving intensity. "Tell me something. When you analyzed my security, what conclusion did you reach about me personally that's not relevant to my assessment?" "Humor me." I considered refusing, but something in his expression made me curious about where he was going with this. "Fine. You're disciplined, intelligent, strategic. You value loyalty and punish betrayal severely. You've built your operation on fear and respect in equal measure. You're attractive and know it. But you don't rely on charm. You prefer directness. You're younger than most men in your position, which means you had to prove yourself more ruthlessly than they did. And," I paused, "and you're lonely. You've surrounded yourself with protection, but protection creates distance. Everyone around you is either afraid of you or working for you. No one just knows you." The silence that followed felt weighted. I'd crossed another line, revealed something I'd seen that I probably shouldn't have mentioned. But instead of anger, Dante's expression softened into something almost vulnerable. "Very good," he said quietly. "And what about you, Elodie Marcelli? What would someone see if they analyzed you the way you just analyzed me?" "Fair question. Uncomfortable, but fair." "Someone who's good at their job." "That's not an analysis. That's a deflection." "Maybe I don't like being analyzed." "Maybe," he agreed. "Or maybe you're afraid of what someone would see if they looked close enough." Before I could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Boss, we need you." The transformation was instant. Dante's demeanor shifted from the almost playful man across from me to something harder, more dangerous. "What is it?" "Santoro's people. They're making noise about the shipment." I didn't need to understand the context to recognize the tension that suddenly filled the room. Whatever this was, it was serious. Dante stood, and I did too. "I should go." "No." The word was sharp, commanding. He turned to Marcus. "Double the perimeter. No one in or out without my authorization. And get Elodie secured." "Secured?" I repeated. "What's going on?" Dante moved to me, and despite the crisis clearly unfolding, he took a moment to meet my eyes. "I need you to trust me right now. Stay in the house. Don't leave. Marcus will ensure you're safe." "Safe from what?" "From people who might think you're valuable to me." His hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. And they'd be right. Then he was gone, Marcus following, leaving me alone in that beautiful dining room with half-finished wine and too many questions. Through the windows, I watched as the compound transformed. Men moving with military precision, vehicles repositioning, the entire operation shifting into defensive mode. I should have been frightened. Should have demanded to be taken back to my apartment, out of whatever danger Dante's world was presenting. But instead, I found myself fascinated. This was what I'd been assessing. Not the polished security systems, but this. The reality of organized crime, the constant threat of violence, the split-second decisions that meant life or death. And Dante Kirill, I realized with uncomfortable clarity, hadn't just been proving points with me. He'd been seeing if I could handle this. If I was strong enough, smart enough, brave enough to exist in his world without breaking. The real assessment, I understood now, hadn't been his security. It had been me. They kept me in a guest room on the 3rd floor. Comfortable, luxurious, completely locked down. Not imprisoned, exactly. Protected. But the distinction felt academic when I couldn't leave. Hours passed. I watched through the window as Dante's men moved across the grounds with the coordinated efficiency of soldiers. Vehicles came and went. Dante himself appeared periodically, always in motion, always surrounded by his key people. Once, he looked up at my window, and even from that distance, I felt the connection. The reassurance that I hadn't been forgotten. Night fell. The compound lit up like a fortress, strategic lighting illuminating every approach while leaving defensive positions in shadow. Whoever these Santoro people were, Dante was ready for them. Elena, the older woman who managed the household, brought me dinner on a tray. Mr. Kirill sends his apologies. He'll come see you when things are settled. What's happening? I asked. Who's Santoro? She gave me a look that was equal parts sympathetic and knowing. Better you don't know the details, miss. Just know that Mr. Kirill has everything under control. But I did know some details. Years of security analysis had taught me how to read situations, how to understand power dynamics from limited information. The Santoro family was another organization, probably rivals. The shipment Marcus mentioned was likely drugs or weapons, something valuable enough to fight over. And Dante's response suggested this wasn't just business tension, but a genuine threat. I should have been planning my escape, should have been calling my company, demanding extraction. Instead, I found myself analyzing Dante's defensive strategy, noting where he'd positioned resources, recognizing the patterns I'd criticized yesterday, being implemented in real-time crisis management. He was good. Better than good. Watching him operate under pressure, I understood why he'd risen so far so fast. This wasn't inherited power or lucky circumstances. This was earned authority, demonstrated capability, the kind of leadership that inspired loyalty beyond fear. It was also, I admitted reluctantly, incredibly attractive. Around midnight, the door to my room opened. I'd changed into the silk pajamas someone had thoughtfully provided, was sitting by the window with my tablet, still reviewing my security notes because work was safer than thinking about everything else. Dante stood in the doorway, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked tired. His hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a smudge of something, dirt, blood, on his forearm. But his eyes were alert, focused entirely on me. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Shouldn't I be asking you that?" A ghost of a smile. "I'm fine. Situation's contained. You're safe." I wasn't aware I was in danger. "You weren't. Not really. But I don't take chances with." He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. "With people under my protection." I set down my tablet. "Is that what I am? Under your protection?" He entered the room fully, closing the door behind him. The space suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. "That depends." Do you want to be? I'm here to do a security assessment, Mr. Kirill, not get involved in territorial disputes. Dante, he corrected. And you're already involved. The moment you walked into my compound, analyzed my operation, spent time in my territory, you became part of my world. That's how it works, Elodie. I don't make the rules. I just navigate them. I stood, needing to meet him at eye level, even though his height still forced me to look up. Then uninvolve me. Let me finish my assessment and leave. I could do that. He moved closer, and I didn't retreat. Couldn't retreat, because my legs had forgotten how to cooperate with my brain's instructions. But I don't think that's what you really want. You don't know what I want, don't I? His hand came up, fingers tracing the line of my jaw with that same almost touch from earlier. You want to understand me. Want to figure out if I'm really as dangerous as people say, or if there's something more beneath the reputation. You're curious, Elodie. It's why you took this assignment instead of passing it to someone else. You wanted to see for yourself. He was right, and I hated that he was right. And what do you want, Dante? His eyes darkened, and for a moment I saw past the controlled facade to something raw underneath. I want you to stop pretending you don't feel this, whatever this is between us. I want you to stop analyzing it like one of your security systems and just feel it. I don't. Yes, you do. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I stopped breathing. You feel it when I'm close, when I look at you, when I almost kissed you yesterday. You felt it then, and you feel it now. Physical attraction, I managed. That's just chemistry. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't it? He leaned closer, his lips near my ear. Then why haven't you pushed me away? Why are you still here, in my house, in my room, letting me touch you when you've spent 2 days insisting on professional distance? Because I didn't have an answer that wouldn't reveal too much. I changed tactics. Tell me about earlier. About Santoro. He pulled back slightly, studying my face. Why? Because if I'm supposedly involved in your world now, I should understand what that means. What you're up against. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, moved to the window, looked out over his compound with the weariness of someone who'd fought too many battles. The Santoro family runs territory south of here, he said finally. They've been trying to expand into my areas for months. Today they made a move on one of my shipments. Nothing major, just testing my response time, seeing if I'd gotten soft. I hadn't. His reflection in the glass was hard, dangerous. I sent them a message. They'll think twice before trying again. What kind of message? The kind that leaves no ambiguity about consequences. Violence, then. Probably death. The reality of who Dante Kyrell was hit me fresh. Not a businessman or a strategic mind, but a criminal. Someone who solved problems with force, who maintained power through fear, who lived in a world where people died over shipments and territory. I should have been repulsed. Should have been calling Sentinel, demanding they extract me immediately. Instead, I found myself asking, why do you do it? You're obviously intelligent enough for legitimate business. Why stay in this world? He turned from the window, and his expression was complicated. Regret mixed with resignation mixed with something darker. Because it's my family's legacy. Because I'm good at it. Because... He paused. Because by the time I was old enough to understand I had a choice, I'd already made too many decisions that ensured I'd never have one. That's fatalistic. That's realistic. He moved back toward me, each step deliberate. I am what I am, Elodie. I won't apologize for it or pretend to be something else, but I also won't involve you in it if you don't want to be involved. Tomorrow, I can have Marcus drive you back to your apartment. You can finish your assessment remotely, deliver your report, and never see me again. And if I stay? The question surprised us both. I hadn't meant to ask it, hadn't even known I was considering it until the words were already out. Dante's expression shifted, hope flickering across his features before he controlled it. If you stay, then I stop pretending this is just about security assessments. I stop playing games, stop testing you, stop trying to prove points. He reached out, actually touching me this time, his palm warm against my cheek. If you stay, I pursue you properly, not as a client or a puzzle to solve, but as a woman I want to know. Really know. My heart hammered against my ribs. This is crazy. You're dangerous. Your world is violent. Getting involved with you would be the stupidest decision I could make. Probably, he agreed. But you're still considering it. I was. God help me. I was standing there in silk pajamas in a mobster's guest room, seriously considering whether to throw away years of careful professional boundaries for a man who'd just admitted to sending violent messages to rivals. I need to think, I said finally. Of course. He dropped his hand, stepped back, gave me space. Take all the time you need. The offer stands either way. Leave tomorrow with your safety and professional reputation intact, or stay and see where this goes. Your choice. Elodie, it's always been your choice. He was almost to the door when I spoke again. Dante? He turned back, hope and caution warring in his expression. Earlier, when you said people might think I'm valuable to you. Are you valuable to me? Actually valuable? Not just strategically? His smile was slow, genuine, devastating. I think you already know the answer to that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with silk sheets and impossible decisions, and the growing realization that somewhere between analyzing his security systems and watching him command his empire, I'd stopped seeing Dante Curel as a subject to assess, and started seeing him as a man I wanted to understand. Dangerous, stupid, absolutely against every rule I'd built my career on, and completely, terrifyingly real. I didn't leave the next morning. The decision wasn't conscious, wasn't carefully analyzed or strategically planned. I simply woke up in that guest room, watched the compound come alive with morning routines, and when Marcus knocked to ask if I wanted a ride back to my apartment, I heard myself say, "Not yet. I need another day to complete my assessment." The lie was transparent. We both knew I had enough information to finish my report. But Marcus simply nodded and left, and I suspected Dante had instructed his people not to push me, to let me come to my own conclusions. He was smart that way, knew that forcing me would only make me resist. I spent the morning actually working, reviewing my comprehensive analysis of his security systems, drafting recommendations that went beyond our initial conversations. If I was going to stay, even temporarily, I'd honor my professional obligations. The report I'd deliver would be thorough, valuable, worth what his organization was paying Sentinel. Around noon, Dante found me in the library he'd given me access to, surrounded by tablets and notes and coffee cups. "You stayed," he observed, leaning against the doorframe. "I still have work to complete." "Of course." That knowing smile. "Marcus said you'd need another day. Funny. Yesterday you seemed convinced you had everything you needed." I looked up from my tablet, meeting his eyes directly. "Maybe I discovered new areas that require deeper analysis." "Maybe you did." He pushed off the doorframe, came into the room with that predatory grace. "I'm having lunch brought here for you. Don't argue. You need to eat, and you won't do it yourself if I don't insist." Bossy. Concerned. He stopped beside my chair, and I was acutely aware of his proximity. "I'm going to be tied up with meetings most of the afternoon, cleaning up yesterday's situation, but I'd like to have dinner with you tonight, not business, Just dinner. Dante. Think about it. His hand brushed across my shoulder, a casual touch that somehow felt more intimate than yesterday's almost kiss. If you decide you'd rather eat alone, Elena will bring a tray to your room. But I hope you'll join me. He left before I could answer, which was probably strategic, giving me space, letting me make decisions without pressure. Everything designed to make me feel like I had control, even as I increasingly suspected he'd been orchestrating things from the beginning. The afternoon passed in a blur of security protocols and internal debate. I drafted and redrafted my recommendations, perfected my analysis, created documentation that would satisfy my company's standards. Professional work that I could focus on instead of thinking about Dante's invitation. Except I was thinking about it, constantly. By evening, I'd made my decision. I dressed in one of the outfits Elena had mysteriously provided, a simple black dress that was elegant without being revealing, professional enough to maintain some boundaries while acknowledging this was more than a business dinner. When I descended to the dining room Dante had indicated, I found him already there, changed into dark slacks and a white button-down that emphasized his build. The table was set more intimately than lunch the previous day. Candles, fresh flowers, wine that I recognized from my research as obscenely expensive. "You came," he said, standing when I entered. I was hungry. Of course, just hungry. But his smile suggested he knew better. He pulled out my chair, waited for me to sit before taking his own seat. "Thank you for joining me." The dinner that followed was unlike anything I'd expected. We didn't discuss security or his business, or the Santoro situation. Instead, Dante asked questions about my background, my education, how I'd ended up in security analysis. He listened with genuine interest, asked follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. And slowly, carefully, he revealed things about himself. Not the dangerous crime lord, but the person beneath. He told me about growing up in his family, the pressure of expectations, the moment he'd realized he was being groomed for leadership whether he wanted it or not. About his love for art and architecture, his complicated relationship with New Orleans, the weight of responsibilities he hadn't chosen but couldn't abandon. "You could leave," I said at one point, wine making me bolder than I should have been. "Start over somewhere else." "Could I?" He swirled the wine in his glass. "Men like me don't get clean starts, Elodie. Too many people depend on me. Too many enemies would see weakness. Too much blood already spilled." He met my eyes. "This is my life. I've accepted that. The question is whether you can. I'm still deciding. I know." He reached across the table, his fingers finding mine. And I respect that. I'm not asking you to commit to anything you're not ready for. I'm just asking you to see me. Really see me. Not the reputation or the violence or the power. Just me. I looked at our joined hands, my smaller one dwarfed by his, my skin pale against his olive tone. "What if I see you and realize I can't accept what you are? Then you leave, and I let you go." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "But I don't think that's what you'll conclude." "Why not?" "Because you're not afraid of me, Elodie. You're afraid of yourself, of what it means that you're attracted to someone like me. You've spent your whole life being careful, professional, controlled. And here I am. Chaos and danger and everything you've avoided. But you're still here, still considering it. That tells me you're braver than you think." The observation cut too close. I pulled my hand back, needing distance. "You don't know me well enough to make that assessment." "Don't I?" He leaned back, that knowing smile returning. "You've spent 2 days in my compound analyzing my security. You think I haven't been analyzing you? I know you're brilliant at your job, but hate that it's solitary work. I know you want connection, but don't trust easily. I know you're attracted to me, but fighting it because attraction isn't logical. and you need things to make sense. He paused. And I know that right now, you're trying to find reasons to leave when what you really want is a reason to stay. That's arrogant. That's observation. You taught me that. Pay attention to patterns. And your pattern, Elodie, is pushing people away before they can disappoint you. He stood, moved around the table, offered his hand. Come with me. I want to show you something. I shouldn't have taken his hand. Should have made an excuse, retreated to my guest room, called Sentinel in the morning to arrange extraction. Instead, I let him pull me up, let him lead me through the compound to a part of the house I hadn't seen before. We climbed stairs to the 4th floor, down a hallway, to a locked door that Dante opened with a key he kept on him. Inside was a studio, huge windows overlooking the city, canvases in various states of completion, the smell of paint and creativity. You paint, I said, surprise evident in my voice, when I have time, which isn't often. He led me further in, and I saw his work, abstract pieces with surprising emotional depth, realistic portraits that captured something essential about his subjects, landscapes that spoke of longing for places he'd probably never visit. These are good. Really good. Art is honest, he said quietly. In my world, honesty is dangerous. This is where I can be truthful without consequences. I moved through the space, studying his work, seeing vulnerability he'd never shown in person. A self-portrait that revealed insecurity beneath the confidence. A painting of a child's hands that suggested lost innocence. A dark, violent piece that was probably how he saw his own life, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Why show me this? I asked, turning to find him watching me with unusual intensity. Because you asked to really know me. This is part of that, the part I don't show anyone else. He moved closer, and I didn't retreat. I'm not just a crime boss, Elodie. I'm not just danger and violence. I'm also this. Someone who needs beauty, who understands art, who wants something beyond power and territory. Why me? The question emerged smaller than I intended. Why reveal this to me specifically? His hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. Because from the moment you walked into my study and told me I was overestimated, I knew you were different. You didn't see the reputation. You saw the reality. You weren't impressed by power or intimidated by danger. You just saw a man and assessed whether he was worth your time. He smiled slightly, and then concluded I wasn't quite up to standard. Do you know how refreshing that was? Refreshing? Everyone treats me like I'm untouchable, dangerous, more than human. You treated me like I was just another subject to analyze. It was. He paused, searching for words. It was the first honest interaction I'd had in years. Something shifted in my chest, a crack in the armor I'd built around my emotions. And now you're trying to impress me? Prove you're worth reassessing? Yes. Is it working? I should have lied. Should have maintained professional distance, given myself an escape route. Instead, I found myself being honest. Maybe a little. His smile was devastating. I'll take it. Then he did what he'd been restraining himself from doing. He pulled me close and kissed me. Not the almost kiss from days before, but the real thing. His lips against mine, firm and warm and tasting faintly of wine. His hand in my hair, angling my head exactly how he wanted it. His body against mine, solid and strong and absolutely in control. And I, who'd spent my entire adult life maintaining boundaries, kissed him back. It was dangerous. Stupid. Everything I'd told myself not to do. But in that moment, surrounded by his art and his vulnerability and the honesty he'd shown me, I couldn't bring myself to care about consequences. When we finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Dante rested his forehead against mine. Tell me you feel that. Tell me I'm not imagining this connection. You're not imagining it, I admitted quietly. I feel it too. Then stay. Not just another day. Really stay. Let me show you that what we could have is worth the risk. I pulled back slightly, needing to see his face. And if I stay, what happens to my job, my career, my carefully constructed life? We figure it out together. I'm not asking you to give up who you are, Elodie. I'm asking you to add something to it. Add me. Add this. His hand moved to rest over my heart. Add the possibility that maybe you deserve more than solitary work and professional distance, that maybe you deserve to be known. Completely. The offer was terrifying, tempting. Everything I'd avoided and everything I secretly wanted tangled together in one impossible proposition. I need time, I said finally. To think, to process, to figure out if this is real or just intensity. Take all the time you need. He kissed my forehead, a gesture somehow more intimate than the kiss we'd just shared. I'll be here when you're ready, however long that takes. As I lay in bed that night, still tasting him, still feeling the ghost of his touch, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt like relief. I'd stopped analyzing Dante Carell and started feeling something I wasn't ready to name. I woke to chaos. Shouting in the hallways, running feet, the sharp bark of orders being given. For a moment I was disoriented, tangled in expensive sheets in a room that wasn't mine, in a compound that shouldn't have been anything more than a work assignment. Then I remembered. The dinner, the studio, the kiss, Dante. I threw on clothes, jeans and a sweater from the extensive wardrobe someone had provided, and opened my door to find Marcus in the hallway, his expression grim. "What's happening?" I demanded. "Stay in your room, Miss Marcelli. Situation's under control." That's what people say when situations aren't under control. I pushed past him, heading toward the sounds of activity. "Where's Dante?" Marcus caught my arm, his grip firm but not painful. "Boss's orders. Keep you safe, keep you out of it." "I'm already in it." I met his eyes steadily. Wherever he is, that's where I need to be. For a moment I thought he'd refuse. Then something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, that I wasn't going to be deterred. Or understanding that my presence might actually help rather than hinder. "Third floor. Security room. But Miss Marcelli..." He hesitated. "What you see in there, what you hear, that's the reality of this world. Can't unsee it once you know." "I know. Let me through." He led me to a room I hadn't known existed. A sophisticated security center with multiple monitors, communications equipment, maps on digital displays. Dante stood at the center of it all, talking rapid fire into a phone, his posture tense. When he saw me, his expression flickered. Concern, frustration, something deeper. He covered the phone. "You shouldn't be here." "Probably not. But I am. What's happening?" He studied me for a long moment, clearly debating whether to send me away. Then he sighed, made a decision. Santoro escalated. They grabbed one of my distribution managers. Probably think they can trade him for territory concessions. "Will they?" "Kill him, you mean?" Dante's expression was hard. "Probably, but not before trying to extract information about my operations. Which is why I need to get him back before that happens." "How?" Instead of answering, Dante returned to his phone conversation, giving orders in Italian that I didn't fully understand, but recognized as tactical planning. Around us, his people moved with military precision, coordinating a response that was clearly dangerous and potentially violent. This was it. The reality Marcus had warned me about. Not the charming man who'd shown me his art, or the vulnerable person who'd admitted his loneliness. This was Dante Kirill, the crime boss, commanding an operation that would probably result in deaths before morning. I should have been horrified, should have been running. Instead, I found myself analyzing the situation with the same strategic mind I brought to security assessments. "They're expecting you to come in force," I said, moving to stand beside Dante. "That's why they took him, to draw you out, possibly into an ambush." Dante looked at me sharply. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you're thinking like a crime boss when you should be thinking like a security analyst." I studied the maps on the screens. "Where are they holding him?" "Warehouse district, one of their properties. Guarded? Obviously. But they're expecting your people. Armed men, multiple vehicles, the full show of force." I turned to him. "They're not expecting someone like me." His eyes narrowed. "Absolutely not. Listen to me. I do security assessments. I find vulnerabilities. That's literally my job. Let me look at their setup, find the weak points, and you can extract your guy without the bloodbath they're probably planning." "No." The word was flat, absolute. "I'm not putting you in danger." "I'm already in danger. I've been in danger since I walked into your compound and caught your attention. The question is whether I'm just going to be collateral damage or actually useful." Dante's jaw tightened, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. The leader who needed every advantage versus the man who wanted to protect me. "It's too risky. Less risky than whatever frontal assault you're planning." I stepped closer, pitched my voice low so only he could hear. "You said you're not asking me to change who I am. This is who I am, Dante. I analyze security. I find solutions. Let me help." For a long moment, he just looked at me, and I saw when the decision was made. "Marco," he called, "get me building schematics for the Santoro warehouse. Everything. Entrances, utilities, security systems." As his people scrambled to comply, Dante pulled me aside. "If we do this, and I'm not saying we are, you follow my lead completely. You don't take risks. You don't try to be brave. You assess, and you get out. Understood?" "Understood. And Elodie?" His hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness, given the crisis unfolding around us. "After this, we talk. Really talk. About what this means, what you're getting into, whether you can actually handle being part of this world." "After," I agreed. "Now show me the schematics." What followed was the most intense few hours of my life. I analyzed the warehouse layout with the same focused attention I'd brought to Dante's compound, identifying weak points, suggesting approaches, mapping security blind spots. Dante's people listened, at first reluctantly, then with growing respect as they realized my assessments were sound. We planned a three-pronged approach, one team drawing attention at the main entrance, another securing the perimeter, and a small extraction unit, including me, entering through a service access I'd identified that their security cameras wouldn't adequately cover. "You stay with me," Dante insisted as we prepared to move. "And you wear this." He handed me a Kevlar vest, helped me strap it on with hands that were surprisingly gentle. I meant what I said. You get hurt, and I won't forgive myself. "I'll be fine. I've done this before. Not like this. Not in an active extraction from hostiles." His eyes met mine. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise. Now let's go get your guy." The warehouse was exactly as the schematics suggested. Industrial, poorly lit, with security that was adequate for keeping out random intruders, but not sophisticated enough to prevent a well-planned infiltration. I guided Dante's team through the service entrance I'd identified, using hand signals I'd learned in federal security training to indicate guard positions and camera blind spots. Inside, we moved like ghosts. Silent, coordinated, professional. I'd expected Dante to be competent, but watching him operate in his element was something else. Every movement was controlled, every decision instant and correct. This was why he'd risen so far so fast. Not just intelligence or ruthlessness, but genuine tactical brilliance. We found the distribution manager in a storage room, beaten but alive. While Dante's men secured him, I monitored our exit route on a tablet I'd hijacked to their security feed. Guards converging on the main entrance. Your distraction team is doing their job. Then we move. Now. Dante helped his injured man to his feet, and we retraced our path through the warehouse. We almost made it out clean. The guard who appeared in our exit corridor was young, probably new to Santoro's operation. He raised his weapon, shouting in Italian, and in that split second, I saw three things simultaneously. Dante moving to shield his injured man, one of Dante's people raising their own gun, and the trajectory that would result in unnecessary death. Wait! I stepped forward, hands raised, using the Italian I'd learned growing up in a mixed neighborhood. We're leaving. Let us pass, and no one has to die tonight. The young guard's weapon wavered, uncertainty crossing his face. In that moment of hesitation, Dante moved, disarming him with a swift, brutal efficiency that left the guard conscious but disoriented on the floor. Run, Dante ordered, and we did. The extraction vehicles were waiting where we'd left them. We loaded in, peeled away from the warehouse before Santoro's people fully understood what had happened. In the back of the SUV, pressed between Dante and his injured distribution manager, adrenaline still flooding my system, I felt something shift fundamentally. I'd just participated in a criminal operation, had actively helped Dante's organization, had crossed a line I could never uncross. And I didn't regret it. Back at the compound, as Dante's people secured their rescued colleague and began damage assessment, he pulled me into his study. The door had barely closed before he was on me, not violently, but urgently, his hands framing my face as he kissed me with an intensity that stole my breath. "Don't ever do that again," he said against my lips. "Don't ever put yourself between a gun and me. I was trying to prevent bloodshed. You were trying to protect people." His forehead pressed against mine, including me. Do you understand how that makes me feel? Having someone actually try to protect me for once instead of just following orders? Dante, no, let me finish. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. I've spent my entire adult life being the one who protects, who makes the hard calls, who carries the weight. And you, this brilliant, infuriating woman who I shouldn't want but can't stop thinking about, you walked into danger tonight. For me, to help me, without hesitation or expectation of reward. I did it because it was the right tactical choice. You did it because you care. Admit it, Elodie. You care about what happens to me, to my people. You're not just assessing anymore. You're invested. He was right, and we both knew it. Somewhere between the security analysis and the dinner conversations and the glimpse of his art studio, I'd stopped being objective, had started seeing Dante not as a subject or a client, but as a person. Someone complicated and dangerous, and surprisingly vulnerable. Someone I cared about despite every logical reason not to. Yes, I admitted quietly. I care. I don't know when it happened or how to stop it. But yes, I care about you. His smile was brilliant, devastating. Then stay, not as my security consultant or my protected guest, as my... He paused. I don't know what to call it. Girlfriend sounds too casual, partner too businesslike. But whatever this is between us, make it real. Choose it. Choose me. I looked at him. This powerful, dangerous man who'd shown me vulnerability, who'd trusted me with his operations, who'd admitted he wanted protection as much as he wanted to provide it. Everything logical said I should run. Return to my safe, controlled life, where feelings were managed and risks were calculated, and no one ever asked me to choose them completely. But standing there in his study, still wearing a Kevlar vest, still tasting adrenaline in his kiss, I realized something fundamental. I was tired of safe, tired of controlled, tired of analyzing life instead of living it. "Okay," I said. "I choose you." The relief that flooded his expression was almost painful to witness. "You're sure? Because once you're truly in my world." "I'm sure." I reached up, pulling his face down to mine. "I'm absolutely insane, and probably destroying my career, and definitely going to regret this tomorrow. But right now, in this moment, I'm sure." He kissed me again, and this time it wasn't urgent or desperate, but claiming. A promise and a beginning, and a point of no return all at once. And I kissed him back, choosing danger over safety, feeling over analysis, Dante Kirill over everything I'd thought I wanted. Complicated? Absolutely. Dangerous? Without question. Worth it? I was about to find out. The morning after the extraction, I woke tangled in sheets that smelled like Dante, cedar and expensive cologne, and something uniquely him. We'd spent the night in his bedroom, not the guest room, crossing another threshold in a series of decisions that were reshaping my entire life. He was already awake, propped against the headboard with a tablet, reviewing what I recognized as reports from the previous night's operation. Even in the morning light, even relaxed, he radiated that controlled power that had first caught my attention. "You're staring," he said without looking up. "I'm thinking." Dangerous activity. He set aside the tablet, turned to me with that slight smile. "What are you thinking about?" "About how I'm supposed to deliver my security assessment to Sentinel, about what I'm going to tell them about why I stayed longer than necessary, about how I'm going to explain that I'm now, what? Dating? Involved with? Sleeping with the subject of my evaluation?" He pulled me against him, and I let myself sink into his warmth. "You tell them the truth, that my security needed more comprehensive analysis than initially projected. As for the rest, that's between us. Not their business." Everything is their business when it comes to client relationships. Then don't make it a client relationship. His hand traced patterns on my shoulder. Tell them you're removing yourself from the project, that you've identified a conflict of interest. They'll assign someone else to complete the assessment. I pulled back to look at him. "You want someone else analyzing your security? I want you staying without professional obligations complicating things. Besides," his smile turned knowing, "you've already identified every significant vulnerability. The next analyst will just be confirming what you've documented." He wasn't wrong. My assessment was thorough, comprehensive. Another analyst would find the same issues, make the same recommendations. My continued presence wasn't professionally necessary. It was personally necessary. There was a difference. "Okay," I decided. "I'll call my supervisor. Explain the conflict. They won't be happy. But it's the ethical thing to do." And after that call, Dante's hand moved to my face, thumb brushing across my cheek. "What then?" "Then we figure out what this actually looks like. Me being part of your world, you being part of mine." I hesitated. "If that's what you want, it's what I want." His certainty was absolute. "Though I should warn you, being with me comes with complications, security concerns, attention from people who'd use you to get to me, lifestyle adjustments. It's not going to be easy, Elodie. I didn't choose you because it would be easy. Why did you choose me?" I considered the question seriously, because underneath the reputation and the power and the danger, I saw someone genuine, someone who wants connection but doesn't trust easily, someone who understands art and beauty but lives in violence, someone complicated enough to be interesting and honest enough to be trusted. I smiled slightly. "And because you're the first person in years who made me want to stop analyzing and start feeling." His kiss was slow, thorough, full of promise. When we broke apart, his expression was serious. I need you to understand something. Men like me, we don't get happy endings. There's always another threat, another rival, another complication. I can give you security, protection, luxury, but I can't guarantee peace. Can't promise you won't sometimes be afraid or angry or questioning whether this was the right choice. I know, and you're choosing it anyway? I'm choosing you anyway. The phone call to Sentinel was as uncomfortable as I'd expected. My supervisor was professional, but clearly disappointed. I'd been one of their top analysts, and walking away from a high-profile client mid-assessment reflected poorly on the company. But I held firm, explained the conflict of interest without providing unnecessary details, and promised to deliver comprehensive documentation for whoever took over the project. By the end of the call, I was officially unemployed. "How do you feel?" Dante asked when I'd hung up. Terrified, liberated, uncertain. I looked at him. Committed. Over the next weeks, I learned what being part of Dante's world actually meant. It meant security personnel who became familiar faces. It meant understanding when to ask questions and when to trust his judgment. It meant lavish dinners, followed by tense phone calls about situations I only partially understood. It meant learning to exist in luxury, while knowing that luxury was built on activities I'd once investigated professionally. It meant falling in love with someone complicated. Because that's what was happening. Slowly, carefully, but inevitably. Love. The real kind, not the analyzed kind. The kind that made me wait up when he had late meetings. That made me worry when situations escalated. That made me grateful for quiet mornings when we could just exist together without the weight of his responsibilities intruding. Dante felt it too. I could see it in the way he looked at me, the way he always made time for me despite his schedule, the way he trusted me with details about his operations that no one else knew. He didn't say the words, but he showed it in 100 small ways. Until the day he almost lost me. It happened fast. The kind of violence that his world always promised, but I'd somehow convinced myself wouldn't touch us directly. Santoro's people, still angry about the warehouse extraction, spotted me leaving a gallery in the French Quarter. They grabbed me in broad daylight, efficient and brutal, bundling me into a van before anyone could react. I knew immediately it was bad. Knew from the way they handled me, not carefully like valuable property, but roughly like leverage to be used and discarded. They took me to a different warehouse, tied me to a chair in a room that smelled like oil and metal and fear. The man who questioned me, older, scarred, with eyes that had seen too much violence, was direct. "Mr. Kyril cares about you. That makes you valuable. Tell us about his operations and we'll return you alive." I don't know anything. He hit me. Not hard enough to seriously injure, but enough to establish that he would. Let's try again. His distribution network. Tell us. I was hired to assess his security, not learn his business operations. Another hit. His suppliers. Who are they? I don't know. This went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 40 minutes. They were professionals, inflicting pain without causing damage that would make me useless as a hostage. I knew Dante would come, knew his pride and his possessiveness wouldn't allow them to keep me. But I also knew that whatever extraction he planned would be dangerous, violent, possibly fatal for everyone involved. So I did the only thing I could. I studied my surroundings with the same analytical mind I brought to security assessments, looking for vulnerabilities, for opportunities, for any advantage. The door wasn't reinforced. The windows were high but not impossible. My restraints were tight but standard rope, not zip ties or handcuffs. The guards rotated every 30 minutes like clockwork. A pattern, exploitable if I could just. The explosion came from the front of the building. Loud, shocking, effective. My captor's attention shifted instantly toward the threat. In that moment of distraction, I pulled against my ropes with everything I had, leveraging the knot against the chair in the way I'd learned in federal security training. one hand free, then the other. I didn't wait, just ran toward the window I'd identified, grabbed a piece of metal debris from a nearby workbench and smashed through. I'd hit the ground outside when I saw him. Dante, moving through chaos with absolute focus, his people providing cover as he headed directly toward the building where they'd held me. When he saw me, his expression transformed, relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. "You're okay," he said, reaching me, his hands running over me checking for injuries. "You're okay." "I'm fine. How did you find me?" "Tracking device in your bracelet. I had it installed after the first Santoro incident." He pulled me against him, and I felt him trembling. This powerful, controlled man actually shaking with reaction. "When I saw they'd taken you, He broke off, unable to finish. "I know. I'm sorry. I should have been more careful." "No." He pulled back, his hands framing my face. "This is my fault. My world. My enemies. You could have died because of me, Elodie. You almost..." His voice cracked. "But I didn't. I'm here. We're both here." Around us, his people were securing the scene, dealing with Santoro's men who'd survived the extraction. It should have been terrifying. The violence, the bodies, the reality of what Dante's protection actually cost. But all I felt was gratitude. For him. For the lengths he'd go to keep me safe. Back at the compound, after I'd been checked by a doctor and given clean clothes and had time to process what happened, I found Dante in his study. He wasn't working, just standing at the window, looking out over his territory with an expression I'd never seen before. Defeat. "This doesn't work," he said without turning. "You and me. This world is too dangerous. I can't..." His voice roughened. "I can't protect you if you're with me. The only way to keep you safe is to let you go." I moved to him, put myself between him and the window. "And if I don't want to be let go?" "Elodie, today was scary. I won't pretend it wasn't. But you know what I thought about while they were questioning me? Not about leaving. Not about regretting my choice. I thought about getting back to you. About making it out so we could have more time together." I took his hands. "I love you, Dante. And I know you love me, even though you haven't said it. What happened today doesn't change that. It should. You should be running. I'm not running. I'm choosing. Again. Fully aware of the risks. Fully aware of the danger. Fully aware that this life isn't safe or easy. Or what I planned." I reached up, made him look at me. "But it's you. And I choose you." Something broke in his expression. The control, the distance, the careful armor he showed the world. "I love you," he said, the words rough with emotion. "God help me, I love you, completely, terrifyingly. You're the only person who's ever seen all of me and stayed anyway. Then stop trying to protect me from your world. Let me be part of it, really part of it. You almost died, but I didn't, and I won't, because I'm smarter than you give me credit for, and you're better at protection than you believe. We're good together, Dante, in all the ways that matter." He pulled me against him, holding on like I might disappear. "I can't lose you. I can't go back to before. Before you made me feel like more than what I do for a living. Before you saw the art and the loneliness, and the person underneath the reputation. You won't lose me. I'm not going anywhere." We stood there in his study, holding each other, the city lights spreading below us like promises of a complicated future. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I first walked into Dante Curel's compound to assess his security. Wasn't anything I'd planned or analyzed or prepared for. But it was real. Messy and dangerous, and absolutely real. "Marry me," he said suddenly. I pulled back to look at him. "What?" "Marry me." His hands moved to my face, thumbs brushing across my cheeks. Not because I want to own you or control you or any of the reasons people probably think, but because I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours. Because I want that commitment. Because I love you, and I'm done pretending I don't need that permanence. That's impulsive. That's honest. His smile was vulnerable, hopeful. But I'll wait. However long you need to be sure. Just know that I'm sure. Have been since you told me I wasn't as extraordinary as people thought, and then stayed anyway when I proved you wrong. I laughed, despite everything. The danger, the chaos, the impossibility of us. You did prove me wrong, for what it's worth. You're absolutely as extraordinary as your reputation. Maybe more. Is that a yes? I thought about everything that had brought me here. The mistaken text that had started it all. The security assessment that became so much more. The moments of connection that had broken through my professional armor. The choices I'd made that had led to this. Standing in Dante Carell's study, being proposed to by a man who was dangerous and vulnerable, and completely, honestly, in love with me. Ask me again in 6 months, I said, after I've had time to fully understand what being part of your world means. After you've had time to see if you still want someone who challenges you instead of just obeying. 6 months, he agreed. But the answer will be the same. I'll still want you. Still love you. Still think you're the best thing that ever accidentally walked into my life. Then it's a date. He kissed me, claiming and promising and celebrating all at once. And I kissed him back, choosing danger, choosing complication, choosing love over logic, and Dante Carell over every sensible option. 6 months later, when he asked again, this time with a ring that had clearly been planned for weeks, I said yes. Because some risks are worth taking. Some connections are worth fighting for, and some people are worth choosing, again and again, despite everything logic says you shouldn't. Dante Carell was mine, and I was his. Complicated, dangerous, absolutely extraordinary, and I wouldn't have it any other way.